There's a point in this process where you stop chasing meaning, not because life becomes meaningless, but because meaning stops responding to effort. At first, that can feel unsettling. We're taught that meaning is something you figure out, something you define, something you build through goals, roles, and identity. So when awareness starts to deepen and that approach stops working, it can feel like something important is slipping away. I remember noticing this shift clearly. I was still doing the things that were supposed to matter, still showing up, still participating, but the urgency to explain my life to myself had faded. I wasn't trying to label what was happening anymore. I wasn't trying to turn every experience into insight. There was just experience, and that felt unfamiliar, because for most of my life, meaning came from interpretation. From asking, what does this say about me? Where is this going? What should I do with this? But at some point, those questions lost their grip. Not in a nihilistic way, in a quieter way, like they had done their job and stepped aside. This is where a lot of people get uncomfortable, because without constant interpretation, there's nothing to hold on to. No storyline, no arc, no sense of progress you can point to, just moments, ordinary ones. And if you're not used to living without narration, that can feel empty. But emptiness isn't what's happening. What's happening is contact. Direct contact with life without immediately turning it into something else. When you stop chasing meaning, you start noticing texture instead. The weight of a moment, the way your body reacts before your thoughts do, the subtle difference between something that drains you and something that doesn't. Before, meaning was something you imposed. Now, understanding emerges on its own. And it doesn't arrive as answers. It arrives as alignment. Things either sit right or they don't. And you don't need a reason. This can feel destabilizing at first, especially if you're someone who relied on thinking to feel grounded. But over time, you realize something important. Meaning didn't disappear. It changed location. It moved out of the mind and into lived experience. Instead of asking, what does this mean for my future? You notice, how does this feel to live right now? And that shift is subtle but profound. Because the moment you stop chasing meaning, you stop using life as a means to an end. You're not trying to extract value from every experience. You're not trying to justify where you are. You're not trying to prove that your life makes sense. You're just here. And here starts to feel sufficient. Not exciting, not resolved, but real. This stage can look like stagnation from the outside. You might seem less driven, less opinionated, less eager to explain yourself. But internally, there's a quiet stabilization happening. You're no longer swinging between hope and disappointment. You're no longer riding the highs of inspiration or the lows of self-doubt the same way, because both of those depended on interpretation. They depended on constantly asking whether life was moving in the right direction. When you stop chasing meaning, you stop interrogating your life, and that creates space. Space to notice what actually matters to you now, not what used to matter or what you think should matter. You might notice that certain ambitions quietly fall away, not because they were wrong, but because they belonged to an earlier version of you. You might notice that some relationships shift, not through conflict, through honesty. You no longer have the energy to perform engagement where it doesn't exist. And that's not apathy, that's clarity. This stage often comes with a strange sense of neutrality. You're not overly hopeful. You're not depressed. You're just balanced. And balance can feel flat if you're used to intensity. But intensity isn't depth. Intensity is contrast. Depth is steadiness. And steadiness allows you to actually live. When meaning is no longer something you chase, you stop projecting yourself into the future constantly. You're not waiting for life to begin. You're not holding your breath for the next chapter. You're participating in what's already here. That doesn't mean you stop planning, or stop caring, or stop growing. It means growth becomes organic, unforced. You move when something genuinely calls you, not because you're afraid of standing still. And when nothing calls you, you don't panic. You trust the quiet. This is where a lot of internal pressure dissolves. The pressure to be someone, the pressure to figure it out, the pressure to turn your life into a narrative that makes sense to others. You realize you don't need to understand your life to live it well. Understanding comes later, if it comes at all. And when it does, it feels more like recognition than discovery. Like remembering something you were never actually disconnected from. If you're in this place right now, it might feel like you've lost your edge. Like you're less sharp, less driven. But what you've really lost is unnecessary tension. You're no longer tightening around life. You're letting it unfold without trying to manage it moment by moment. And that can feel vulnerable, because without meaning to cling to, there's nothing to hide behind. No story to protect you. No explanation to justify your pace. Just presence. And presence is honest. It doesn't inflate you. It doesn't diminish you. It just tells the truth. This stage doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't announce itself as growth. But it's one of the most important shifts that happens in awareness. Because this is where life stops being a problem to solve and starts being something you're in relationship with. You respond instead of strategize. You listen instead of label. You move when it feels right and you wait when it doesn't. And that waiting no longer feels like failure. It feels like trust. You're not waiting for meaning to arrive. You're allowing meaning to emerge from living. And that's a different orientation entirely. So if you've noticed yourself less interested in answers, less attached to explanations, less driven to define your path, you haven't lost your way. You've stopped chasing something that was never meant to be caught. You're not done. You're not complete. You're not finished. You're living. And living doesn't need to make sense all the time. It just needs your attention. And that attention, quiet, honest, and unfinished, is enough.